Please give a warm welcome to the cinematographer James Laxton that's joining us today. So James has 40 credits thus far, as all these guys do, keep climbing. Some of his highlights include Adult World, Tusk, Camp X-Ray. James is a prior winner of the San Francisco Film Critics Circle, New York Film Critics Online, National Society of Film Critic Awards, USA, and the LA Film Critics Awards, along with his first Oscar nomination for Moonlight. So congratulations, and I'd love for all you guys to get a statue on Sunday. So all the best of luck with that. Moonlight, beautiful movie.
I hope so.
How did you get into cinematography?
I'm one of those people that sort of everyone hates because I have a parent in the business. My mom's a costume designer, so I grew up on sets a lot as a young kid.
Right.
And sort of falling in love first of all with just the process of filmmaking generally on set anyway, and sort of really watching these departments kind of exchange ideas and collaborate. And as a sort of 8 to 10-year-old, I was excited about sort of the craziness of the set and how that creative process happens. And then as I got a little older, Mom would sort of like I'd come to work with Mom, and she'd drop me off at the back of the camera truck and say, "Hey, take care of this kid for a few hours." And they were kind enough to let me come and sit on their cases and sort of watch what they were all up to. And then as I got older, they would sort of allow me to sort of help sort of measure their lenses out and things like that. And I just sort of fell in love with all the tools, truthfully, yeah.
That's a perfect story, to grow up with it.
Yeah, no,
Literally.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, then story became interesting to me and how to tell a story. And then as I'm getting older now, personal voices become interesting. So it's been a long, long time to get to hear, but kind of a fun one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Moonlight before we introduce your clip and how you got associated with this movie.
Yeah, this is a fun one because so many people involved with the film I know in both in work and out of work. I mean, Barry Jenkins is someone, the director of Moonlight, is someone I've met back in film school. We both went to Florida State Film School in Tallahassee, and that's also where both of our editors, Nat Sanders and Joy McMillan, went as well. My wife, who produced the film, also was an alum of that school. She was a grade below us, and we were all together. And
wow, total family business.
Yeah, no, it truly is. And so it's been a special moment for all of us to have this together in that way. It's been very exciting, and it's sort of enjoyed supporting one another through the process. So I knew them from way back when. And then Barry made a previous film in 2009 called Medicine for Melancholy, a very small film. It was his first feature film, as it was mine. And so we've been collaborating since then. I shot Barry's film school films. We've learned to make films together from the very beginning. And our relationship just has grown from there.
Wow, cool. Yeah. So why don't we introduce the clip that we have?
Yeah, I think you guys are doing the swimming scene clip.
Yes.
So this
kind
is a scene.
baptizing, yes.
Yeah, precisely. So in this scene, you're about to see the young main character, Chiron, who's at this point in the movie, I think sort of around 7 or 8 years old or something like that, is being given a little bit of a swimming lesson in the Atlantic Ocean by this sort of surrogate parental figure named Juan in the film. Yeah, take it away. Yeah.
Give me your head. Hey, let your head rest in my hand. Relax. I got you, I promise. I'm not gonna let you go. Hey man, I got you. There you go. 10 seconds. That right there? You're in the middle of the world, man. That's good. You like that? Okay, you good? More athletic. There you go. I think you're ready. Think we got a swimmer. You wanna try? You ready to swim? Go. Yeah, man. Yeah.
That has to be very challenging to shoot that, being in the
Yeah.
water. Did you intend for it to go that way, or did it change?
No, we sort of
over the
intended.
duration of the
Yeah, I
shoot?
mean, the backstory of this is I think I actually wanted to go to a place with bigger waves, but very rightfully so said no, we should go here. But no, the idea here, I mean, one of the global concepts for the film visually was to like talk about this immersive in perspective and place the camera within the character. So in this scene particularly, for example, the idea to get the camera in the water was, obvious. It had to be that way. For example, if we were going to get on a long lens of the beach and sort of film close-ups from there in this very sort of maybe more precise fashion, I don't think it would have felt the same way. So this idea of bringing the camera into the water to feel the tide pull the lens as it also is pulling the characters in the scene back and forth and fight the tides and things like that. That was all thought out to sort of hopefully present a perspective that engages with what the characters are doing at the same time. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I also heard as well that throughout the movie you guys use different film stock looks.
Yeah, the different LUTs and the DI.
Yeah, can you talk about that and why?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, color is a big deal for this film generally. Miami is a very colorful place. The idea of temperature, feeling the perspiration on people's faces throughout the film. But there's all these things are sort of, they get touched on when you start working in the DI and you start shifting colors here and there to sort of emphasize these things. So that was part of it. The other aspect was, hopefully to enhance colors, specific colors for different acts. For example, the LUT we chose in the first act is a Fuji LUT, which sort of traditionally anyway, in a general sense, enhances sort of blues and greens in some fashion. And for us, that sort of spoke to what we thought, sort of that age of a child, that age sort of as he experiences the city of Miami being sort of so much green around him and
Right.
the ocean, et cetera. And then as a teenager, we went to like an old Agfa LUT, which again traditionally sort of is like a more pastel palette of sorts, and that was chosen to sort of hopefully emphasize sort of a subdued sort of perspective that maybe as a teenager one might have about their surroundings. And then in the third act, we chose a Kodak LUT, which traditionally, again, has a sort of a warmer kind of emphasis on sort of warmer hues. And that was intended to sort of make us as an audience sort of emphasize the sort of that warmth or safe quality of that. Maybe like, for example, in the third act, we have that diner scene, which is lit with all these sort of incandescent sort of light bulbs and such. And so, each of these LUTs was chosen just for a particular emphasis on a certain hue of color within the spectrum.
Wow, beautiful. And then you shot this on the Arri XT
Exactly. Yeah.
and Hawklight.
The Hawk V
Atmos?
lights. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And to speak about the anamorphic choice first
Yeah.
before the lenses. I mean, the whole idea there was to sort of to hopefully it was the intention to basically take what is possibly a subtle and nuanced story with quietness that might not feel. Someone else might have chosen to match that concept with the lens choices and to sort of be softer and more subdued. But we thought, let's engage with sort of the emotional value of the experiences that these characters are going through and present that idea. And to us, that sort of spoke to this different scope and this different sort of elevation of visual language that, for us, choosing anamorphic played a big role in that sense.
Yeah. It really helps with the intimacy level. So
I think it does, but also it's funny. I associate anamorphic traditionally anyway. Maybe not going back to the beginning of anamorphic, but how it's used today with sort of like Marvel films or things like that. And that element of how those films present scope, we felt would be really interesting to apply that to what is maybe a more nuanced and sort of realistic-ish kind of experience or narrative.
right. Back to the sequence that we just saw. It looks like the weather was kind
Yeah.
of changing quite a bit during the shooting of
You
that
noticed, yeah.
sequence.
Yeah, that was a tough one for us. The backstory again to that is we showed up on the shoot day then, intended to be a 6-hour shoot for that one scene. Barry, because he's from Miami, grew up there, walked onto the beach and sort of looked out as one does when they come from that part of the world and knew very, very clearly, okay, we have about an hour and a half to do this. So we quickly got the camera in the underwater housing and got out there. It is not so dissimilar from what the script is, but we really leaned on Mahershala, the lead actor there, to sort of help us with that moment, because time was of the essence, and
Yeah.
we couldn't, for example, like, okay, let's go back to the beach, let's reassess how we're doing, and go back out again. We really kind of had to be out there and take advantage of every single second we had. So yeah, as you see in the background, as that scene progresses, it's getting cloudier and cloudier and cloudier.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I mean, I
Typical
think
Miami weather.
it
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
precisely. And I think it's something interesting happens there a little bit emotionally as well. I think the scene takes on a different emotional value as the scene sort of starts to be not as colorful and vibrant. There's a sort of a tone that shifts that you sort of experience again. I think, something Barry and we love doing is sort of allowing location to influence us creatively. And so when we saw that happening, and we had no choice, but this is a film that didn't have the ability to go, well, let's pack this in today, guys, we'll come back tomorrow, or let's go to our cover set. That wasn't an option for us. So we sort of had to lean in and sort of say, okay, this is happening. How do we allow this to sort of tell our story in another way?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, so did anything happen during this shoot where you didn't work the way you originally envisioned the particular scene would work out, and you had to kind of change things up?
I mean, that's one example,
Right.
for sure. That's probably the most clear example.
Okay.
We know the way Barry and I prepare for a film is we definitely do a shot list. We don't go so detailed to do boards, but there's a plan on the day as to what needs to be accomplished. For the most part, I think we've stayed generally true to that. I remember the only other time I remember specifically he sort of threw a curveball at me was, it's a different clip, I don't know if we have it, but there's a scene in the film when, in the high school section, when Chiron is about to get beat up, and he's walking out of the cafeteria at lunch and into this sort of school area, and the people that are bullying him kind of walk or circle around him. Getting to that day, Barry came up with this idea that, we'll come off the back of the Chiron character and watch this character circle us, like almost like a shark would circle its prey. And a few times, and we did this on this very, very long telephoto lens, which was a very technically challenging thing to do at the time. But so he threw that curveball at me, but I think in the end, as much as I was nervous about it, I'm very proud of sort of how that turned out, because it was a great idea. But I think that's sort of how we tend to work. We generally stick to a broad outline of what we're up to. At the same time, we tend to sort of deviate when necessary.
And then it was just single camera on this show. There was no B camera.
No B camera, yeah. That's for a particular reason. I think there's such a subjective perspective that this film has within it.
Right.
The moment, if we were going to do this 2 cameras and sort of have this, possibly at times or very often, what would happen is you have this sort of omniscient perspective, sort of a watchfulness
And then,
of the moment,
kind of changes
and
the
all of a
emotional
sudden
context.
that connection to the audience is sort of lost. So for us, it was very, very important that a single camera was used. I think if we would have tended to sort of add another angle elsewhere within the scene, I don't know they would have had that emotional impact that I think it has now.
So we have some questions here that have come through already. So what was your visual reference for Moonlight? Looks like it may be some fine art.
That's very kind. So there's a bunch. The obvious ones that were sort of, I remember putting together like a mood board and things like that were scenes from Spike Lee's Clockers was definitely one. A bunch of Wong Kar-wai films. These are for sure.
Interesting, right? Yeah.
Films that Barry and I sort of watched when we were in film school. Both Happy Together for sure was one, and then also In the Mood for Love as well. There's definitely some films from Claire Denis that we're both fans of. I think absolutely as well. There were references for this. I think those are the 3 sort of filmmakery examples for sure. So yeah, that's good references for us.
And then going back again to the scene that we showed, obviously, the camera in the water, and someone had already called it out as well. It kind of was a little reminiscence of like what was done in Jaws with the camera in the water.
That's funny.
Any correlation, or
maybe subconsciously? I mean, I don't love sharks. Maybe just as I was out there, I was feeling about that. But no, I think that idea of how the water breaches the lens of those moments and how it sort of stays at that height was mostly really, again, going back to that immersive quality that we were looking for, and allowing the camera to sort of play a role as the character is and experience things the same way he or she is. So that's where that concept came from. The Jaws reference, it's interesting. I mean, there's a bit of tension in there as well as there is in other scenes in the film that I'm sort of interested in, but I don't know that Jaws specifically was a reference for us. As much as it sounds cool. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, like I guess for people that are out there wanting to be a cinematographer,
Some thoughts?
some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I think, my journey through this, like I said earlier, a bit of my background, but once I got out of school and was sort of left to my own devices, shooting as much as I could helped a lot. Like, I'd just sort of go to anything that sort of needed someone to sort of help along the way. So I did a lot of projects for no money, very little money, et cetera, just to sort of get out there and gain some experience. So saying yes to everything at the beginning was sort of my philosophy. I know that's sort of, not everyone's, but for me, that's what I did. But I got some great advice along the way from people. A particular example of that, I remember speaking to a camera operator early on when I was sort of interning was, I'm going to paraphrase, but something to the effect of, you're not hired because you know the gear better or you're technically more knowledgeable than someone else. The guy at the rental house who's checking the gear out, et cetera, is going to know the gear better than anyone. You're hired really because of how you communicate to the director, with the producers, with the actors, and that communication level is really what the job becomes at some point. I mean, so much of what I do, especially as shows get bigger and the crew gets larger, is a communication job. Trying to express to someone what your ideas are and helping them sort of help you through that creative process is a lot of what the job becomes at that point. So communication is a big part of what the job is. That's on some level.
Cool.
Yeah.
We have another question came in. Read that the film and the play were highly personal stories. Did you try to relay that through the film's cinematography and visual language?
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, a little bit of backstory. The movie comes from originally a play, and it was adapted by Barry, the director. Barry and Terrell McCraney, who wrote the play, initially come from this neighborhood the movie's actually about. They grew up blocks from one another. They have very similar sort of backgrounds in terms of their upbringing and et cetera. And so knowing Barry so well, I just met Terrell recently for the film, but knowing Barry so well and having such a personal relationship with him, I could feel how important it was for both these people to sort of express themselves in a very unique and personal way. So my job became really trying to express myself through, hopefully through what their experiences were like, and intending to sort of make choices based on that personal experience. I mean, again, going back to this idea of immersiveness and a personal perspective, this one camera show, et cetera, all those choices were exactly what you're talking about, going back to this idea of how to express a very personal experience.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, James.
No
Again,
problem.
very
Thanks, guys.
generous for your time.
Not at all.
We
Anytime.
wish you all the best on Sunday.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Thank
Appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure. Absolutely.